And we're live. We are live. Just making sure everything's right with my hairs. My hair's fine. Let's do this. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a two-part video, this is. If I don't remember the Writer's Tales that I did a couple of years back, this is like the new version of that. It's not like it's a redone version of it. Basically just to focus on one thing that I've been writing for about 5 years, since 2017, which is Class of '89. I got your spin-off. If you remember The Last Adventurers, which I've done versions of, like maybe like the first half of that bit on the original Writer's Tales, and also did like I guess we call it like a little guide thing, something like that, on the Crosscut Falls Winds and Willows Facebook page. Still there, it's like it's in 6 parts it is. What I can remember. Still there actually. So if you know, it's the old stuff's still there, so the old documentation's still there. And yeah, I thought, yeah, that'd be something really. Nothing else to it really, but there we go. So yeah, Doctor Who spin-off I've been working on since 2017, focused on the adventures of, you know, I like various different characters from animated TV shows from the 80s and 90s. 80s and 90s, probably more my time I've been seeing shows from there, really. So it's about like a love letter, sort of a nostalgia feel to me, really. Also just introducing them, and also you know, just doing like a redone version of that, really. It's taken a while, but I finally got it. I do. So this is series 1 to 3. This is, so I'll explain. You know, when part 2 comes out, I'll just explain it. I will. If you see something different about it, with later ones, of course. So yeah, so series 1 to 3, I'll talk about in this video. So let's go for the cast of characters. There's 15 characters to go through. So there's 4 protagonists and 1 companion to go through. So let's do this. I'll just get the list up just briefly, and we will just check. Absolutely. Right. So first we've got is Paul and Bill, Norman Russington. He's from the Adventures of Paul and Bill. Everyone knows that one. Caramel Bunny, voiced by Miriam Margolyes, was the Cadbury Caramel Bunny. Again, who's advertised Cadbury's Caramel in the 80s and 90s at that point, really. I think she just did the 80s, I think something else voiced her. I don't know, really, but there we go. She's quite, obviously, they've forgotten about, but I think people remember still. Joe Camel, voiced by Lorenzo Music, of Camel Cigarettes, like another advertising icon, really. Well, also forgotten one, actually, in terms of American. Just advertising cigarettes and like very sort of very Johnny Bravo-esque type character. I describe him as Joe Camel in these stories. Charlie Chalk, Michael Williams from Charlie Chalk, obviously. Lambert, Paul Nichols from Creepy Crawlies. If you've seen that. Dick Spanner, Shane Rimmer from Dick Spanner PI, bit of an underrated Jerry Anderson show that I like. Her Highness, Peter Hawkins from The Family Nest, the Queen of the Nessies, Sam Payton, John Alston, Fat and Sam, you get the gist. Gran, Patricia Hayes, again from Gran, sort of like a forgotten TV show done by Woodland Animations, Ivor Wood, done that one. Huxley Pig, Myron Jarvis, again another one that's quite familiar. PC Bob Pinkerton, Ian Lavender from PC Pinkerton, and it's quite a forgotten one actually, but there's like a figure of him for the Bandai version, so he's included. So it's like a physical form he does, like in terms of stop motion animated form he does. Pat Clifton, Ken Barry, Crossman Pat, obviously that's the obvious choice. Burke, Willie Rushton from The Trapdoor, and Mr. Toad, David Jason, The Wind and the Willows. So there we go. So there's your cast of protagonist, and a companion is a 5-year-old child, 5-year-old boy called Scott. Just Scott. No one knows his last name or anything else, but he's based on the actor Scott Chisholm. If you remember BBC Future Generations, which was part of that Children Need trilogy that they did in the late 90s, of course, because she had the Perfect Day single music video over the All-Star thing from 1997. This one from 1998 involves Scott going around seeing different characters from the 50s to the 90s on BBC television at the time. It's like a little walkthrough of stuff, explaining what the BBC World did and all these bits and pieces that have progressed and whatnot to young people. And then you got the Shaggy Dog story involving comedic actors, comedians from SI9. So there's that weird little trilogy. If you didn't know it was a trilogy, actually, but it's actually, if you look it up, it's quite strange, really. So there's a little linking thing going on there, apparently. So he's in there, he's just a 5-year-old child, that he does encounters really. And also the main thing about this is it's inside his head, which I'll just point out now, it's all set inside Scott's brain, because he's in a coma, and in reality he's in a coma. So, and obviously it's never explained really, but like whereabouts, whereabouts. But I think he's like, in a coma, and these characters he's probably seen maybe a long time ago. He's probably watching as a child really. So they're there just to guide him through these adventures really. As like sort of like guardians, or like Leo guardians. Like he hasn't got any family or friends. He's just got these people here. Like for the majority of Class of '89, really for the 3 seasons. And it's gonna be something interesting really. So you basically got more adults and one child involved in this, but it's quite interesting. Obviously it involves the TARDIS, of course. It does take some elements from Count Duckler. It does in some places, like the cholesterol rings, of course. If they're out on adventures, of course, they've only got like a limited time they do, and the cholesterol rings, they have to go back to the TARDIS and go off the next adventure. That's what it is. Like with Castle Duckler, they have a certain time to go back to it until they get back to Transylvania. It's like that really. This, they don't go back home. It's like they have a continuous adventure they do. From one adventure to another they do throughout, because it's in Scott's. It's in the mind of a child. So, I think there's some unlimited rules in there or something like that. In terms of what his mind can do, what he can do in his own mind, something like that. I won't say flat out be all powerful and fails. He's just like a standard child, trapped to his mind at this moment. Like he's stuck in his mind with these characters. Who are sort of leading the charge and getting all sorts of adventures they do. So there we go. So we'll go into the characters, which we've done. Excuse me, I just messed it up again. We'll go for the stories now. So we'll go for series 1. So there's 36 stories to go through in this bit. So there's 12 in each series. So for the first 3 series, there's 12. We'll go through them. So let's go for series 1. So which we'll do. Now I'm going to read these because these are Doctor Who stories. They are. I've written them as Doctor Who stories. So when I say the Doctor, I mean the protagonist in this Class of '89. So that's how it's written. Because these all originate as Doctor Who stories. That's Doctor Who fan fiction really. That's how I've reinserted or got rid of the Doctor and plunked in these characters in. Kind of Scott. But these are sort of like original stories that I've written as they're written as Doctor Who stories. I feature the Doctor and his companions really in this one. So so don't be confused. Don't be like wait, you're turning like a different subject here. I'm just that's the point really, because it's just how it is really. That's how I've written these synopses on these things. So we'll go through them, obviously. So major changes, of course. There'll be the major changes, of course, if you see it. So there we go. So episode 1 of series 1 is called Lost in the Chemical Age. Kendall, 1989. 10 toilets have disappeared into thin air without a trace or any physical evidence. Young couple Steve McBride and Elise Springer's lives are turned upside down when they encounter the Doctor, a mysterious traveller whose ship is in the shape of a police box and is also investigating recent disappearances. The search leads them to an encounter with a very old enemy and a sinister gay business couple whose plan to drain the life forces of the young into infant formula for profit. That's episode 1, Lost in the Chemical Age. Episode 2, Feast of the Seven. The TARDIS lands on the deserts of Tenderness, a planet home to an ancient temple that houses the tombs of the 7 angels of Spirality, elder gods from the planet Atalin, who caused bloodshed on their people and were executed for their massacres. A spaceship owned by the Mosul travel system dumps a plethora of spring breakers onto Tenderness, and a sandstorm approaches. Seeking shelter inside the temple, the partygoers continue their riotous behaviour, but when they accidentally resurrect the 7 angels of Spirality, that's when all hell breaks loose, literally. So that's episode 2. Episode 3, Rome, 2134. The city at this point in time is a concrete jungle. The food is dishwater and dead bodies are clogged up the canal. The Doctor and his companions are hoping for a decent vacation, but the atmosphere quickly reaches dire circumstances. Pope Eleazar IV is assassinated in broad daylight during a speech. Bizarre symbols are spray painted across the city. Hooded monks are mumbling a strange language, and a corrupt cardinal is preparing the apocalypse as a second attempt to one that was the first tried back in 1971 at Devil's End. That's Pentagram. That is episode 3. Episode 4, Export USA. Austin, 1976. A black metallic pod crashes on the outskirts of the city, and a highway patrolman is found dead at the side of the road with his head sucked dry. The military are summoned to the crash site, but the Doctor and his companions are also there. The pod opens, and a small group of humanoids emerge to welcome themselves to American citizens. However, the peaceful arrival is soon shattered when the humanoids start killing the citizens. Their reason? To harvest human brain fluid because it's a source of protein on their home planet. And that's episode 4. Episode 5 is the 8th generation. Chip and Barnett, 1982. A video store owner called Vera Lansted is selling tapes of a film called Cannibal on a chain to children for pocket money prices, and are secretly watching them at midnight. But that's when the television screen starts mutating into a flesh-like womb and releases a mutated cannibal with a chainsaw blade for a right hand. The Doctor and his companions soon realise that an invasion is brewing and head to the video store to confront Miss Lansted. But she's not what she seems when you look underneath the long skirt. That's episode 5. Episode 6 is the Pinocchio Virus. The TARDIS lands on the planet Rymora, home to a medical research facility specialising in psychic abilities, and all operations are led by Dr. Nephilim and his nuns. Nephilim is trying to extract the ability of telekinesis from children and prevent it from being a strange overflow when they reach adulthood. But when the children escape from their confinement and attack the staff, elsewhere the nuns are having fits of psychic bursts indicating that their telekinetic abilities are quickly taking them mentally. So that's episode 6. Episode 7 is the Embedding. The planet Yolanda is facing an invasion. Tribesmen are being abducted by humanoid dwarfs in little saucers and are taken to a space station above the planet's surface. After disabling one of the saucers, the Doctor, his companions, and a group of tribesmen venture to the station to rescue the adopted ones. Once arriving, they discover the sinister plans of the researchers involving culture cleansing and office work. That's episode 7, the Embedding. Episode 8 is Bodyshock. The Doctor takes his companions to the planet Barcelona, where he was longing a visit for some time. However, the hopes of some joyous sightseeing is dashed when random people start disappearing on the streets by weird-looking bulbous baby-headed humanoids in vans. And talk has it they are whole organ harvesters. This leads to a facility where giant alien lobsters are searching for bodies to fit their brains in and to settle amongst society, plus to have world domination. So that's number 8, Bodyshock. Number 9, Liberation Day. St. Peter Port, 1952. The locals are preparing for their National Day after being under German occupation during the Second World War. A boy wanders the shore, only to discover a tattered leather-bound book and decides to read a couple pages from it. As dust settles, 6 corpses emerge from the English Channel and are believed to be dead Nazi soldiers from a platoon. The Doctor and his companions must save the town from attack and need to find the book, but the boy who found it is slowly going older by the hour. That is episode 9, Liberation Day. Episode 10 is In Search of Darkness. A house party is getting started in West Hollywood. Music is blasting, the Kool-Aid is being poured, and slow dancing is all around. The atmosphere is suddenly evaporated when the Doctor's companions emerge out of the kitchen fridge. The Doctor looks at the teenagers and says that they're actually dead by a knife-wielding madman. They try to escape, but the doors and windows are bricked up. A man known as Alexander Shuttleworth randomly appears like a ghost, giving it the revelation that a reality is created to restore the recently dead. And that's In Search of Darkness. The penultimate story of Series 1 is Ether, number 11. The TARDIS accidentally collides with a warship containing heavily armed American soldiers who have been fighting an intelligent insect race called the Zim for 3 years, and the war is slowly coming to an end. While the starship is hovering over the planet, the soldiers are suddenly being picked up one by one by an intruder, and he appears to be changing its form after each killing. The Doctor and his companions, along with the stern Commander Cyrus, must search for the creature to prevent bloodshed and before he can escape elsewhere, and that's Ether. And the final episode of Series 1 is The Milk of Paradise. Los Angeles, 1979. The TARDIS lands in an alleyway with the Doctor and his companions witness a man horrifically overdosing. The man dies, and there have been reports of a new drug in the city called Tempest, which when mixed with milk, gives stronger but fatal highs. The Doctor finds a tenant and heads to the apartment where the tenant is required. The Doctor is suddenly reunited with Jo Grant, but she's not the woman she used to be. Resorted to prostitution for her ever-growing drug habit. A mysterious sailor called Reggie Maud is selling a new variant of Tempest, and once the junkies are dead, they rise up with arachnid tendrils sticking out of them. an invasion as we go. That is series 1 of class of 1989, and yeah, I'll briefly go through what they originate from actually. So I'll go through them briefly, of course. Lost in the Chemical Age, that was originally from a fan audio series that I did back in originally planned to do in 2017, and that stayed on for many odd years, of course. If you various different things, it was planned to be set in 1994 in somewhere like in where did I play? Somewhere in Essex, like suburban Essex or something like in 1994. But it changed to Kendal. I saw a 20-minute video someone posted on Facebook. I thought, I'll say in my hometown in the 80s. So there we go. So we have a story set in Kendal, of course, in the Lake District. So fantastic. Episode 2, obviously Feast of Seven. That was again same for the same reason actually. Fan audio series from 2017. Lost in the Chemical Age, Feast of Seven, Pentagram, Export USA, and the 8th Generation were part of that fan audio series that actually came from 2017. So they're like the early stories from the time I've stayed onto this final version, which I'm proud of. They're really good. I'm very proud of these stories. I am. Episode 6, the Pinocchio Virus. So I think that was actually when I was doing the last Adventurers. There was a story that was like one of the last few stories that to be written actually or planned actually. It come from a submitted idea by Kate Holman for a Virgin Misadventure, because she did a Virgin New Adventure novel called Sleepy in 1996 and was planned to do she submitted an idea for one involving the Six Doctors and Perry, like a prequel to that or something involving the events of Sleepy, but that never came to be. So I basically took a bit of it. And also some parts of it involve a Craig Kenton story that was meant to be involved like telekinetic nuns. It was called Rapture or Witch Fire, it was called, but it ended up being not going through with it actually. But so some Virgin New Misadventure stuff is included in this one, Pinocchio Virus. Again, the title really and some of the telekinetic nuns really in that one. The Embedding, that's another one that came from the fan audio series from 2017. Bodyshock, that was I think one of the last stories that was written. Title comes from a proposed idea from Jim Anderlin and Jim Mortimer, one of the early submissions, again involving alien lobsters. So that includes like that. So that's where it comes from. And it's all fleshed out now in Barcelona, which has been referenced in New Who, actually. I think at the end of series 1, in Part of the Ways. So we do see what Barcelona looks like in this story. Indeed. So yeah, nothing to say that one. It was like one of the last ones I saw lastly rewritten as well. Like the last few quite a few of the last few stories rewritten for the last Adventures really at that point. Or no, actually I think it was written as an actual Doctor story that I've written and sort of what I was going to do to include it in. So there we go. Liberation Day, one of the early stories in the Last Adventures. When I started doing the Last Adventures, it was one of the early stories to be written. It is on the Writer's Tales thing as well, and that document I did on the Wizard and Wales fan page is still there. So it's one of the other stories that have to be included in this one, which I do like. And then you got In Search of Darkness, which of course I think originally was a 5th Doctor story that I've written. Yeah, because some of them actually originally as Doctor stories actually. I mean, obviously Pinocchio Virus was a novel submission in the 90s that was with 6th Doctor in. Bodyshock actually I think I written it as a 10th Doctor story actually, even though it was based on a Virgin New Adventure pitch by the authors, Lane and Mortimer. I didn't use it as a 10th Doctor story actually. I don't know if it was in series 2 or series 3 I've written for. Rose and Martha, I'm not too sure. But it was a reworked version of that one. In Search of Darkness obviously is the 5th Doctor Perry one that I sort of writ, and the title comes from, if you ever familiar with Oliver Harper, he does these documentaries. He did the documentaries now, these Kickstarter documentaries. In Search of Darkness obviously involves 80s horror. He did one In Search of Tomorrow or something, In Search of Last Action Heroes, that sort of thing. So In Search of Darkness I think is a good cool title, so I used it then. Then you got Ether, another one from the 2017 fan audio series, of course. It was originally titled Homecoming. It was that changed to Ether. So that's another one. That's an old story that I've written 5 years ago. That was 5-6 years ago. So it's included there. Then you got Milk of Paradise, which originally was a 4th Doctor story that I've written. When I was doing The Last Adventures, this is one of 3 stories that I've written alongside it actually. So the first thing to actually write proper Doctor Who fan fiction, and that was this one. It would have been solo fourth Doctor, so between Deadly Assassin and Face of Evil. It would have set in that one. And actually, fun fact with this one, there's a partial script as well. Actually, I've written a bit of a section of a script of it actually, and it had different characters as well. It had two characters called Sheena and Marcy in it, and I submitted it off to two different people. The first one was Farrah's Features, which is Billy Garrett Johns. Well, actually, it's a company done by Billy Garrett John and Josh Carr, really. Billy was doing, I found he and Matthew Toffler were doing, planning to do an audio series, they were. And they were asking for writing on Twitter, actually. And I sort of emailed. Obviously, you just email, send a sample script or whatever, and did that, really. So Milky Paradise was that story. Never gone anywhere. Same with the other one, which I did for Josh Carr was doing one, which is called The Peculiar Adventure of Doctor Who, actually, which he's sort of finalised now, actually. I don't know if it's coming out this year, I don't know. So I sent off that script, actually. I think another one as well, actually. So maybe a couple of ideas, but nothing's came from that, actually. I still got the emails I do on my phone, on here, really, but nothing came of it, really. So there you go, some interesting history about these stories, actually. So that's series 1 in a nutshell. Let's go on to series 2. Series 2. So again, 12 episodes. This is the norm. Let's go through them. So, episode 1 is Integral Trees. The TARDIS lands on the planet Ivor Scott, apparently named after the planet's founders, and is home to a botany facility where people are educated to study the importance of plant life. A new specimen has been discovered on the outskirts of the facility and is planned to be experimented on when the time comes. A group of reckless botany students sneak into the classroom and start prodding the pod until it starts hatching and unleashing vine-like tentacles and turn the students into hosts. They escape and storm the facility, leaving it in major jeopardy. So that's Integral Trees. Episode 2, Project Barrier. The TARDIS actually crashes on a traveller's colony on Venus in the far future. While the Doctor and his companions are recovering, a ship lands outside the colony and a spate of killings start. The Doctor inspects the bodies only to learn that they're killed by sonic blasts, and he worries that an old enemy has returned. The Daleks are here, and they are searching for a piece of a doomsday weapon that they're rebuilding, whilst killing the travellers in the process. The body count is rising, and the Doctor needs to act fast. Episode 3, The Drowned Towers. The TARDIS lands on the Isle of Arran in 1263 during the Scottish-Norwegian War, and the Doctor's companions discover a beached lay-down warship with its soldiers dead. Then two tall tin-clavet towers emerge from the River Clyde, and an air race knows the Harkollins are planning to eliminate humankind. War creatures are entering the battlefield and are ravaging both the Scottish and the Norwegians. The Harkollins are the next stage of invasion, and the Doctor realises that he's met something like this before, back in Little Hogcombe. Episode 4, Ice and Iron. The TARDIS lands just outside New York City, and the year is 2006, but something is terribly wrong. The city has entered an ice age 2 years prior due to extreme climate changes, and the remaining citizens who survived the catastrophe are living on the icy surface waiting to be rescued, but no one has turned up. While observing what has caused the event, the Doctor uncovers a hidden agenda from a paleoclimatologist who wants to have leadership and power amongst the citizens, especially the women. Episode 5, The Morning Feasters. The TARDIS lands on the planet Lawley, where a marriage between the Franzine and Quansin Griggs clans are being held. The Doctor's companions are welcomed by the inhabitants, but something sinister is going on with them, and keep licking their lips in a seductive manner. The Doctor's companions suddenly get separated and are forced into a horrible situation, either to get married or be sacrificed to be part of the annual feast. The Doctor realises that the whole welcoming scenario is a ploy to be eaten by a forgotten enemy, the Androgons. Episode 6, Slaves of the Moon. The TARDIS lands on the space station Nova Quadrant. The station's crew have been reeling the death of one of their own colleagues due to committing suicide by getting out of the airlock, and the presence of a nearby moon that wasn't there that makes the Doctor suspicious. Later on, the station's crew start acting strange, and one by one they're slowly possessed by the moon to communicate with the Doctor, his companions, and the station's crew. Its main intention is to destroy humanity due to being a life form now reduced to a sentient entity. That's episode 6. Episode 7, The Secret Baroness. 1987, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher receives a parcel from somebody unknown and decides to open it. A blast of tear gas engulfs her office and knocks her out. When she awakes, she discovers a tracking device that's been embedded into a skull. And to make things worse, an Aztec chief called Tekala is trying to assassinate her. The Doctor and his companions intervene to kidnap Thatcher, who's in a conscious state. From London to Poland to a climactic battle on the Falklands Islands, the Doctor is at wit's end to save the current leader of the UK. Episode 8, Death Cloud. The Doctor lands on the planet Colif, a sanctuary for people who have mental instabilities. The Bulb protects a carefree environment for the ones who need a safe haven, kindness, and the more important thing, love. But when the Doctor and his companions rock up, that's not what entirely is the case. Most of the people have disappeared, killed, even eaten, and that the love is being required, it has a more darker and sinister flavour to it. The Doctor must penetrate the cuteness and sugariness of this revelation, if it does turn the Doctor mad. Episode 9, Astronaut Vine. The TIE lands on a starship called the Embedding, where hundreds of auctioneers are having their 132nd annual ceremony, placing bids on the most obscure and intriguing items that are worth the money. Hosting this year is washed-up American actor and entrepreneur China DeMario, whose overexcitement and brashness isn't winning the guests over. The Doctor joins in the crowd and discovers that one of the lots is actually reconstructed crewmen from various space missions from Earth's history, housed in cryogenic pods. But the auction is suddenly hijacked by the Crotons, demanding the lot either by persuasion or by force. Episode 10 is Pipeline. The TIE lands in a supermarket called Plus in the West Midlands in the year 1993, and the Doctor quickly realises that something is definitely wrong. Famous celebrities like John Lennon, Marilyn Monroe, amongst others, are shopping civilly, but once leaving through the automatic doors, they reappear back in like nothing's happened. The staff are all murder victims from various centuries. A giant house spider is the store's security, and the store's managers are a sextet of altar boys with sinister sexual deviances. And that's Pipeline. The penultimate story of Series 2 and Episode 11 is Colony of Deceit. The TIE lands on the planet Florana, where the Doctor has been planning a visit for a very long time, but his hopes are dashed when he discovers the planet has been reduced to a dumping ground for toxic waste and dead bodies. A hatch is discovered on the seabed, and the Doctor's companions find that there is an elevator shaft leading to somewhere below the sea. Once reaching the bottom, they discover that it's a refugee base for various amphibious races who have fled their home planets. But one of the factions starts brutally killing them off. And finally, for the finale of Series 2, Episode 12, is European Sun. Paro, 1943. A group of Nazi soldiers led by Lieutenant Holson are in the Himalayas seeking valuables to steal and destroy. Then they encounter the Doctor and his companions having a picnic. Then he takes them hostage and lead them to a Tibetan monastery where the Nazis siege, killing the monks in the process. While rummaging in the monastery, Holson discovers a carved wooden box. Inside is a black heart, still beating. Suddenly, Holson starts eating the heart and becomes possessed by someone called Havesteig, a sorcerer that was executed for using black magic and had his heart removed. A battle between wits and magic has commenced. So that's Series 2, that is. As always, we'll go for the stories, of course. So, Integral Trees, that was written for The Last Adventurers. Same thing like Liberation Day, that was written when I was really thinking about doing The Last Adventurers, like properly filling it out. That was one of the stories that was. So obviously, very Seed to Doom, very sort of like Hot House, Big Finish story that did, well, it doesn't involve the Krynoids, it involves something called the Vesiopians, it is. So there we go. So, similar to Krynoids, but I don't spin on it, really. My own spin on it. Project Barrier was the fifth Doctor story, and it's the only Dalek story on this one. I'll flatly say it out. This is the only Dalek story through the series, so they only appear in once, they do. It's a fifth Doctor story, and I did sort of show it to a guy, DVD and film blog I did in an email. I was sort of like, because he showed me some scripts of his, actually. I showed him some Doctor stuff I've been writing, actually, and this is one of them, actually. I sort of planned to write as like, I think as a fifth Doctor story first, then it became something else, actually. I think I sort of planned as like another fan story, like you become your own doctor or something like that, like audio visuals or something like that. When Nicholas Briggs the Doctor, basically that thing, really. So it's also a brutal Dalek story. It is. Selm Venus, of course, very sort of Alien 3 inspired, that is, as well. If it's sort of, I use anything as a bit of inspiration, really, for this one. Episode 3 is The Drowned Towers. So in the synopsis for that one, it involves the Harkollins, and I mentioned no Holcomb. It's basically it is another Doctor Who story, and this is basically like a follow-up to the Awakening. It does follow like a similar thing with the Hollow Men, which is that past Doctor Who Adventure story, novel I've got actually, by Martin Dane Keith Topham, involved with the same Doctor and Ace. This one is a six Doctor story. This was what can I recall? The title comes from Daniel Manny, which came from a third Doctor and Joe novel he was going to write, a missing adventure that submitted but never came through or anything like that. I don't think. I think it was like a follow-up or something when he was doing Man in the Velvet Mask, I think. But there we go. And it's only Isle Ran actually, saying the Scottish Norwegian Wars, largely because my dad actually told me about my family history, actually, his side of the family history, and that our ancestors are Scandinavian, well, actually Norwegian they are. Scandinavian, Norwegian, really, and they were involved in with the Scottish, really. They basically raped and pillaged the Scottish, they did. Back in the day, back in whenever, 1200s and whatnot. That's all in the centuries ago they did. So I thought I was intrigued by that. I was fascinated by it. I thought I need to do a story like that involving these sort of Scandinavian, Norwegian, Scottish, really. And there we go. That's what Drowned Towers is about, really. So it's basically involves some little bit of interesting family history about my dad's and the family, and also make a sequel to Awakening out of it as well. Like you actually see what the Harkollins are. They actually are the main enemy in this story. Whereas in Hollow Men and The Awakening, they involved war machines actually. So you get the Jack and the Malice, which you see in the show in the expanded media. This one you actually see the Harkollins properly in this story. They're the main threat in this one. They are. Ice and Iron, that's another one that was part of the Last Adventurers bit, really. Very Day After Tomorrow influence, really, of that one. The Morning Feasters, Sixth Doctor story again. Actually, no, it's a Ninth Doctor story, actually. Is it Sixth Doctor? I don't know. Ninth or Sixth. And it, of course, involves the Androgons, which involve the two Doctors. I love the two Doctors. So I'm interested about with the Androgons, really, because they're like the cannibal race they are. Odd looking cannibals with bushy ginger eyebrows and warts and whatnot. So I did something like that, really. I think it was meant to be something different. It was called Palace of the Morning Feasters, but I just shown it to the Morning Feasters, really, to the veil. It just stuck, really. So there we go. So it just involves Androgons and, that sort of thing. Slaves on the Moon, that's another one that was written for The Last Adventurers, so that's, again, same with Ice and Iron, Tegel Trees, Liberation Day, that sort of thing. The Secret Baroness. So this is one of the early stories that I written, the early Doctor Who story that I written back in 2012, so 10 years ago, that I written that one. It was a 7th Doctor and Ace story that I written, and again involved Margaret Thatcher, really. Again, being more in witness protection. I don't think Thatcher was unconscious in that version, though. I don't think so. I think she was just stuck with the Doctor and Ace, and they just transport around different places, different points, really, like jumping, teleporting and jumping around different places in 87, 88, or whatever. I think. I don't know if it was one of the early ones that Ace was involved, or was it after? I don't really know. Some of them involving, maybe after Dragonfire, or maybe just like in between season 25, I don't know, really. But it's one of the early stories I've written, actually. There's a few other stories that I've written in 2012 I saw re-emerged in this part, maybe on next part. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's one of the early stories. It was originally called Enemy. I called it Enemy Papers in Last Adventures, which you see in the document as well. If you follow the Monday Millers Facebook page, you keep reoccurring. That's on there, but it's called Enemy Papers. Basically, like the same similar story, but without it's got Thatcher unconscious, like a Week in the Bernies thing, really. But that's one of the very early Doctor Who stories I've written, so it's finally here on this one. Death Cloud, another Doctor Who story I've written. I think it's a 6th Doctor story as well on that one. And nothing to say about that one, really. Astronaut Vine, that's another one that's from the Last Adventures guide as well. Written for that one as well, indeed. Pipeline. This is an interesting one. This is another early Doctor Who one that I did, I think, for the fan audio series in 2017 that I did work on. This involved a story arc, like a 10-part story arc involving the Doctor being stranded in the 1990s. So there are some stories that actually come from various different pieces really. The Eighth Generation was one of them actually, even though the title said it belonged to a different story really. It didn't involve really Nasty. It was, I think it was like from a different story, really, an entirely different story actually. Actually, I think it probably did actually, which I think I'll use later on actually in this series really. Maybe once led to part 2, really. Yeah. So obviously there was the Eighth Generation. There was this one really as well. Again, 1993. So it would have been the 4th part of that series. There would have been a few there were some stories I sort of considered but never used really. So there was the first one story was Root of Evil. It was called Crimson Dawn. It was originally about same Tokyo really in 1990, and then the Doctor got stranded. So each story was set in 1991, 1992, 1993, 4, whatever. Nothing. Lost in the Chemical Age was in that bit as well actually, but I mentioned before I was maybe saying 1994 that was. So it was meant to be included in this this 10-part story arc really. But obviously stuff got changed and some stories will reappear actually when I get to them. So yeah, that'd be something. And also the Supermarket Plus, that is, I think the fictional supermarket used in Brom Goes Shopping for the Brom Series 2 episode. So there we go. So that exists. It's basically the same supermarket that Brom goes into. Actually, with the interior really. He goes into that episode, that brilliant episode. Yeah, funny actually. Colony of Deceit is the other one. That was again another one for Last Adventure, of course. That was originally titled The Secret People. That was so. I think it had three different names actually. Mystery Mars of the Ocean was the first one. Then it was The Secret People, and then it became Colony of Deceit. Yeah, I think that was the last main thing. Colony of Deceit just came about really because I changed the Secret Baroness. I did. Also, I didn't want like a story like the Secret Baroness, then the Secret People. A bit too, it's like it's like you have 2 stories after it was called the Secret, or the Secret of Cassius, or the Secret of a 10, or whatever, something like that. But not, I just wanted to just change the interesting titles in that one. So yeah, so Colony of Deceit, and someone you feature Sea Devils in this one, and obviously Florana, which is mentioned Death to the Daleks. It was. Obviously, we finally get to see it actually. See in comic books and stuff like that, really. But I'd like to see it, rather than being lush and parasites, like oh, happy place. I like to be like a bit of a rundown, like it used to be good, now it's a dumping ground for shit, really. So there we go. European Sun is the last one. So this one's interesting because it wasn't originally a Doctor Who story to begin with. Actually, it began to be like a movie. It's more like a comedy horror story that I did, and bit like sort of like Possession, Evil Dead type stuff, saying a Tibetan monastery and Nazi soldiers. I mean, the whole day. I mean, Monuments Men sort of was a lot of inspiration of it, really. I mean, it involved Nazis stealing precious artifacts and paintings and stuff, really. So you saw the history of the Second World War with them lot, really. I saw a bit around the idea, really, and obviously, the intellect Tibetan, temple. And the lieutenant gets possessed by this sorcerer, well, the Black Art, really. That's literally come from Jason Goes to Hell, Friday the 13th, 9, that does. Literally, if you see that film, and Jason ends up, getting people to gets people to possess his heart, and he becomes them, or something like, or hosts them, or something like that. It's a bit of a weird. It's a weird sequel. That is a bit of an odd one, oddball sequel. So yeah, and that's all. It's like a mixture of that sort of thing, like Monuments Men, Evil Dead, Jason Goes to Hell next year, and that one with a mixture, with a sorcerer, and hosting a bloody Nazi lieutenant's body or something. So it wasn't originally to be a Doctor story to begin with, but I like the concept. So I like the concept as I used it anyway. So, and also European Sun's named after a Velvet Underground song. There we go. I think the last track on Velvet Underground, Nico. Yeah, it is. Let's try to remember now. So there we go. So that's series 2. So we finish off with series 3. Okay. And we'll go through them now, actually. So again, 12 episodes. Let's go through them. So episode 1 is Family of Noise. Reading, 1974. The Swanson family are enjoying their weekly picnic in the park. But then a stench of ammonia engulfs them, and they quickly flee back to their family home. As the hours progress, they start becoming horribly sinister by luring various people of different skin colour, ethnicity, and sexuality into the house. When reports of these experiences arise, unit is called and so is the Doctor. The main point of action is to gain access to the house and confront the gaseous evil that's inhabiting the family. And that's Family of Noise. Episode 2 is No Feelings. London, 1978. Strange noises have been coming from the drains around the 32 local authority precincts. And a group of construction workers have been found mutilated in the drainage system. Units are called into action around the same time as the TARDIS lands nearby. But when the Doctor steps out, he is suddenly attacked by a group of punks, and they steal his belongings. Recovering afterwards with no sonic screwdriver or nor key to the TARDIS, the Doctor joins unit by venturing into the drainage system in order to discover the Cybermen, who are starting a delayed invasion which was meant to commence on April the 1st, 1965. That's No Feelings. Episode 3 is Dovetail. The TARDIS lands on the Archeon, or the Archeon, a satellite built from wood by Luddite monks who have turned their backs on technology and live in harmony, involving farming and literature. The monks have told the Doctor about a mysterious black pod that they receive from the vacuum of space, and it suddenly cracks open only to impregnate one of the monks' sheep. The creature they're dealing with is a bone wraith, a parasitoid that is a cross between a cougar and a Komodo dragon with a bone/muscular structure, and is killing off the monks one by one. Episode 4 is Maniac's Tear. London, 1891. Frances Coles has been murdered under a railway arch in Whitechapel, but when the police turn up, her body has suddenly vanished, and only a puddle of blood remains. News of a recent opening of a body preservation centre intrigues the Doctor and comes face to face with the owner, Edmund Valentine. Valentine has sinister motivations to do with the preservation process, especially towards women, and plans to take the Doctor's companion, either by persuasion or by force. Episode 5, Digital Tenderness. Liverpool, 2001. Archie Miller is an alienated 20-something with Down syndrome. He has an estranged relationship with his father and resents his mother's embarrassing overprotectiveness. One day, Archie comes across a broken computer in a bin bag and decides to take it home to assemble. The computer then springs to life and commands Archie to retrieve more components, but if people get in his way, he'll kill them, leaving a murder trail. The computer named Sienna plans to reignite the Millennium Bug and make everything technological take over. That's Digital Tenderness. Episode 6, Godspeed. The TARDIS lands a human colony on the planet Bardock, and the colonists are again excited by their own one and only saviour, Jesus Christ, who has appeared in the flesh. The Doctor is sceptical about this and tries to convince the colonists that he's a fake and is calling them for resources. The colonists, devoted to the presence of Christ, imprison the Doctor and his companions as a way to make them see sense. But a body count starts rising with the colonists' life forces sucked dry. The Doctor was right, but no one believed him. Episode 7, Blood and Soil. Hanover, 1937. A young man called Elias Hilbert is disillusioned with the Nazi right. Decides to rally Jews, Romas, and Slavs to form a platoon and take down his father, an unforgiving captain who plans perfectly timed attacks as a way of whitewashing and not letting the truth out by his own accord. The Doctor surveys Elias and sometimes interferes with his plans of getting near to his father. Only the Doctor can watch and sometimes persuade Elias, but even that can stop his determination to assassinate his own flesh and blood. Episode 8, Entrapment. Bournemouth, 1986. 3 young friends are playing in the garden, and in it is a nuclear fallout shelter that has been left unused. One night, a flashing green light lands in the neighbourhood, and the kids soon realize that aliens have arrived, so they arm themselves in the most ridiculous manner. They discover 3 different alien creatures who escaped prisoners seeking refuge in the fallout shelter and are living off tinned fruit. The kids make an agreement to keep them a secret, but the neighbourhood watch soon find out and call in the authorities. Episode 9, Kelly Green Men. Hoskinville, 1955. The TARDIS lands near a farmhouse, and the Doctor's companions are swept up as hostages by a gun-tossing family. The family take them to the farmhouse and starts interrogating, believing that they're aliens. There have been sightings of goblin-like creatures lurking in the fields, and a couple of the locals have been found on the ground in a hypnotized state. Skeptics say that the reports were due to the effects of excitement and misidentification of natural phenomena such as meteors and owls, but no one knows what really happened. Episode 10, Sense and Spirality. The TARDIS lands on the planet Dovetail, a world torn in political warfare, riots, and under securitized control by armed police officers who are also judges and executioners. The world has a new leader. His name is Wiseman. He brings them promise, he brings them safety, and he brings them sanctuary to to this pathetic planet. He starts bringing in robotic soldiers called the Quaves to clear the streets and take down who opposes him. But behind the personality and mannerisms lies an intelligent being that believes that size does matter. The penultimate story of Series 3 is Approach the Dark. The TARDIS receives a distress call from a mining ship called the Austin Taro and quickly materialise. Crew members have been going missing, and when random cuts occur and come back in a zombified state with their eyes removed. A dangerous entity is living in the darkness, freezing off human vision, and the Doctor is at odds end with a complicated situation. With the recurring power cuts becoming more and more, the Doctor must prevent any more bloodshed to be fulfilled, including the lives of his companions. And the final story of Series 3 is called Meltdown. Magaluf, 1994, the Doctor and his companions arrive at the major holiday resort and embrace themselves as tourists. A group of young tourists entice the Doctor's companions to go partying with them, and the Doctor lets them. They go from bar to bar until they reach a tacky Essex nightclub with a rampant sexual scene called Breezes, run by Lane Patton. Recently brought into Spain are alcohol pops, and they're consumed like a treat. But after a while, the holidaymakers start suddenly down the streets. A viral species are planning to invade, and they need hosts to continue. And there's Series 3. And as always, we'll go through where these come from. Okay, so Family Noise, again, came from Last Adventures, from, one of the other stories that came through. It's one of the more video nasty stories, really. Very English way of death it is. It involves a Gaseous family taking over a family, the Swansons, and they're luring people like different skin colour, sexuality, and everything else, and it's basically murder in the house, really, in the basement, whatever. Quite horrific stuff. That's one thing. Really. No Feelings, that was a Ninth Doctor story that I've written. Ninth Doctor meets assignment, also meets unit as well. And the title comes from a Sex Pistols song called No Feelings. Again, I always like the idea of the Doctor involved, in the punk movement mixed together. You only get that in No Future, really. Paul Connell's No Future from 1984. Nothing else. I love to see a Doctor story, in the late 70s doing a punk, height of punk. It would have been fantastic, really. But we only got that one novel, really. So No Feelings is another loving example, really. Involves punk youths being the shape of the Doctor and Stingers belongings and everything else, and also getting killed off by Cybermen. So there we go. Dovetail. This is another really interesting. This is another movie pitch, but it's actually one that was done back in the 90s. And this is Vincent Ward's Alien 3. This is. When I found about what Alien 3 was originally before David Fincher and until Fox decided to redo it and turn it into a prison planet, whatever, it was meant to be set on this wooden planet by monks in the middle of space. And I thought, wait, what? Considering from Alien, after Aliens, because you got Alien and Aliens, and then you're going to come to Alien 3, and it's all set with monks, and it's like Name of the Rose in space. It's like, what the fucking hell is this? It would have been like a giant shift, if that was made. It was, like a wooden planet, Xenomorph, Ripley going around, and all this sort of thing. And it's like, wait, what? It would have been, and Fox said it was too artsy-fartsy, really. But I like the idea of it. And if you're like, that would have been a good Doctor Who story, actually. It's so Doctor Who-like. Monks in a wooden spear in a vacuum space who, disown technology, turn their back on technology. That would be really good. So I attempted to do something like that as a target novel, really, because I found the original script of it actually somewhere. Written one of John Franco's script for it. That would have been interesting actually. That would have been, and also I did start work on it actually a bit briefly, but I sort of gave up on it. But Dovetail, obviously, I think the name comes from like a version, like a name for woodwork as well, actually. So sort of fits really. Obviously, I'm going to use xenomorphs. So I just basically thought like, what can I do actually? I can probably make, I created the bone wraith really. Again, like I say, it's a cross between a cross between a cougar and a Komodo dragon, and it's basically made of muscles and bones, really. So it's like that sort of thing. And again, merged out of a sheep, really. That's what happened in the Vincent Ward script, really. Instead of Alien 3 out of a Rottweiler or of an ox, it came out of a sheep in the middle of a field, like a wheat field in a wooden spear. So there we go. But interesting, fascinating. Then you got Maniac's here. The title comes from a Mark Gatiss submitted idea for Virgin New Adventures before he did St. Anthony's Fire. So this is after Nightshade, before St. Anthony's Fire. Involve Victorian London, that sort of thing. But also because say it was like the projector would be actually like Jack the Ripper. Really, it involves in Jack the Ripper actually. The only thing involves with it is involves one of Jack the Ripper's murder victims, or the last victim actually, Francis Coles. But also he come from a different. Well, the whole thing about with the Preservation Society and Evan Valentine come from another story actually that came later, but I saw. It's called Valentine's Porn. It is Valentine's Porn, P-A-N-N. Just so you know if I pronounce it wrong. That was meant to become later on, but I sort of ditched it really, and ended up reusing it for Maniac's tier really. And again, a bit like House of Wax and everything, a bit like House of Wax, that type of story. Evan Valentine, I think, is based on Anthony Hopkins. He is in this one. Anthony Hopkins as the main villain, as one that just pinching women. More interesting pinching women and like stuffing them in a preservation area, really, like a museum or something like that, all for his own pleasure. Who knows? Digital Tenderness, another one that came from The Last Adventurers pitch. Same Liverpool, of course, fantastic city. It does involve someone involved with disabilities, really. I think that's an interesting idea. It's like it's a story that you never read. Never actually ever done with actually involving disability. They've sort of done this involving like ethnicity and maybe have a wheelchair-based companion, which they have now with Madeley. I think so. Yeah, she's in with Big Finish at the moment with Colin Baker and Bonnie Langford. With that box set coming out, but no one with with learning disabilities and also Down syndrome and everything else really, because I know if you actually work with a lot of people with cerebral palsy and learning disabilities. I think I have a few people with Down syndrome really, but I never really worked with them really. But I did care for a few people of that sort of with disabilities really. I thought something like that would have been a bit of an interesting thing. Also, how the way they are, they're easily led by one thing. Archie's easily led by this computer because she offers him reality. She offers him like a new haven, escape from the reality you're living in. Where you're living now in this world, you can come with me and I'll show you something better, something like that. Unless you get the components and start killing people. And yeah, there we go. The end of this is dark. I wouldn't say anything about what the ending is. It is dark though, I have to admit. I'll leave it at that though. If you want to comment down below, I'll probably send the comments, what's the end of that story? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything about that. So we go. Godspeed. Godspeed, that was another story that was from the fan audio stories that was. And actually, it was called The Second Coming. And that was meant to be part of the 10-episode arc of the Doctor being stranded in the 1990s. Would have been set in 1991, that story. And again, same story really. It just involves people, Jesus Christ, sucking souls out. Or an alien called Orpsh, I think it's known as. Orpsh, something like that. Bit of an odd name to spell, really, Orbst or something like that. Some random alien that takes the form of the Lord and Saviour and sucks souls out, really, whatever. Called The Second Coming, it was. So that was, again, that was the second story of that 10-part story arc in 1991. So there we go. Blood and Soil, that was another story that I written, actually. A Fifth Doctor story as well. Another Fifth Doctor story. There's quite a few Fifth Doctor stories used in this one, so far. That's another one. Again, very human stories there. I mean, it's basically, there's no real phrase, it's focused on Elias Hilbert, really. In this one, like, trying to kill his own father. Just basically that sort of thing, really. Again, like a personal thing, like, he disowns his dad because he's a captain of the Nazi Reich, really. He just tries to rebel against it and try and kill him, really. It's like if your dad, your dad was part of the IRA, really. Would you resent it? Would you try and kill him, though, for trying to terrorize around Ireland and whatnot, that sort of thing, bombings and everything, try and hurt civilians, really, getting caught in the crossfire, this whole thing, would you do that? It's all a better question, really. Anyway, your own father goes off with these sort of people, of course, IRA Nazis or whatever. Would you kill him? That's the thing. Do you resent it? I think you probably resent it, but would you go the further mile and actually kill him, assassinate him, and rally people just to murder that one person who's your own flesh and blood, your own father? Who knows? Story explains this, it does. Then we've got Entrapment. Same with European Sun. This was another one that sort of wasn't a Doctor Who story, but it was like, like sci-fi adventure type thing, really. Again, like E.T. It's like E.T. mixed together with Real Soon Bob 2 and the episode, the Only Fools and Horses episode, The Russians Are Coming. So a mixture of them ones, really. And also maybe a bit of District 9 as well, included. Yeah, again, aliens in a fallout shelter in suburban Bournemouth, really. It's all set in summer as well, really. The residual Bob, I think most of the stuff included in this is more like sex comedy stuff as well, with the Real Soon Bob element. Again, there's like, you get all this sort of, the supporting characters you either meet, like in Feast of the Seven, integral trees, in other stories as well, Entrapment as well, involve teenage. It does involve young couples, teenagers, that sort of thing, and sexual, promiscuous misadventures, really, that sort of thing. Which the main protagonists don't do that. They never do that. They're sort of like they're in this world. They sort of enter this world. It's like blimey. It's like, oh god. It's like they're sort of like, oh god. It's like it's like, we've gone to the adventure, we'll sort of, alien invasion, we do that. We go. We're just here for that. We're here to hit the sides, not get curled up in like, some girl probably works by a deli or something, fancies them or something, It's like, who knows? So there we go. That's really Entrapment, really. That's what Entrapment's all about. Kelly Green Men, that's another one that was from the Found Audio series from 2017. Again, so like Lost in the Chemical Age, that sort of era. Originally called The Abductions, that was. Really. And also it's based on I think it's based on the Hopkinsville phenomenon, really. So it's based on that, but it's like a fictional version of that, really. So nothing else to say about that. And obviously the ones great goblins and everything else. Well, they're meant to be seen, really. And also I've been looking into it actually, about this phenomenon, really, and so I'll tell you a little bits and pieces really out of it, really. That's interesting. It's pretty good. Sense and Spirality, that's another one. Again, came from Found Audio series. That was originally called The People Who Couldn't Remember, I think it was. But it's basically the same story, really. It does have that 2000 AD influence, of course, like I mentioned, with police officers who are judges and executioners as well. So it has that sort of Judge Dredd 2000 AD thing about it as well. And Wiseman's based on Alfred Hitchcock, he is, and also the alien. It's also the alien as well. It's basically, you ever seen Men in Black when they go to the morgue and you see that little small green alien in the head? Basically, that same thing, really. Although it's not like that. Well, it's not that really. It's basically like a white mouse, like a white rat. Because there's some vintage sci-fi art I saw recently on Instagram. And also think about redoing as well. And it's got a rat in it. So it's really, again, it's like that. Oh, what's that? Oh, Robert the Reindeer. Again, with the whole that rat thing, what Jeff Goldblum's character is. It rips off every single mask. And apparently, it's like this Spanish Mexican hamster underneath. Again, very Men in Black as well. Very sort of, again, like a very small creature, intelligent creature. That's basically like, just like a talking rat, a talking white rat in a head. It's weird. That's what Wiseman really is. I was escaped by people and everything else. It's like, I'll take over this perfect planet if I have to with work soldiers. Originally, they were meant to be quarks. Funny enough, from the Dominator's ball, changed to Quails. They're sort of like, they're similar, really. I think it looks at the plans of the quarks, so we might update them. So they're sort of like maybe updated quarks. They are, maybe. I think they sort of turn out with their guns. Like how they stumble as well. They sort of waddle they do. They're basically like quarks, but more advanced versions of that, really. Tough ones to go through. Approach the Dark. So let me think of this one. Again, another one that was written for the Last Adventures. It's very, so the idea of the what's it called, a so-called surge. It's known as an entity that's still seen in vision. That came from a television show I've seen. My mum was watching called Urban Gothic. Very forgotten TV show. Think of like Tales from the Crypt, but British and low budget. From 2000 on Channel 5. And as for the second series, it was It was an episode called The Sandman. It was. Also, you got people getting their eyes taken out. When I watched this, I never saw it until years later. When I was a kid, though, I saw the DVD artwork of it, and I thought like they'll be like a zombified state with their eyes missing, and they probably try and take someone else's eyes or something like that, like an expedition crew, something like that. And I thought, oh, they're like an expedition crew going into caves or something like that, and they get their eyes ripped out and become like a zombified state and take out, and probably happen the same to the other people. Really, that's how I envisioned that story, and it was completely different from when I watched The Sandman in particular. But that idea that stuck. That idea, that little notion, how many odd years ago, back in the 2000s, whatnot, that stuck. That definitely stuck. That did. So I reprogrammed it into the story, which is very sort of like sort of Maniac, very Alien-esque, but it does have that sort of gothic, presumably scenario, that made-up scenario that I thought of, included on this one. So yeah, that's interesting. And Meltdown, the last one. I think it was the working title for Power Play, the Gary Hopkins story that he adapted from Big Finish with Victoria Warfield, Six Doctor and Perry. Let me think. What was it? I mean, obviously, this is in 1994, so it's not the actual original version of Lost in the Chemical Age. It's not that entirely. Although it was a story that I've sort of redone. It sort of came, but the location really came out through the song Boys and Girls by Blur. And, like Damon Albarn and Justine Fletcher, who's Tiny's girlfriend from Elastica, went to Magaluf, obviously, and they see all these tacky Essex bars and everything else, like very sort of British type thing, a little bit naff, really. So he made the song Boys and Girls Girls and Boys about it. But Girls and Boys, yes. About it, really. So, yeah. That's where the inspiration for Meltdown really comes from, really. And also Alcopots were introduced around that time. So like Wicked VK, that sort of stuff, and Breezes. Breezes, I think, is another Alcopots, but I changed made it to a nightclub name. Yeah. I don't know what else really to say about that, really. But it's interesting. It's saying like in Magaluf. And yes. So that's it, really. That's Class of 1989. That's Series 3. So I've done Series 1 to 3, really. I've gone for the for the first 3 series really. I'll put the titles down below, of course, in the description, not the whole synopses really. But if you're interested to know bits and pieces, just comment down below if you're interested. If not, that's fair enough. It's just something I've written really, and some stories you've probably heard beforehand on Last Adventures, The Mice Tales, but this is like the proper finalised version of this show, or this project I've been working on for years. About 5 years, and it's finally sort of slipping into place now. So there we go. So Class of 89, Series 1 to 3. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, see you in the next video. See ya.